hear, feel, think, and listen to today's episode of A Grand Line Reborn, a One Piece / Final Fantasy XIV podcast brought to you by Third Impact Anime. Well, today it's just going to be a One Piece podcast, as just like Luffy's Straw Hats, we never seem to be able to stick to the plan. Our review of the Netflix live-action series is still in the pipe, and Bill should be wrapping credits on the Heavensward 3.x patches in time for the next episode, but we had already talked about the first part of the next One Piece saga, Water 7. Initially, we wanted to combine this part with Bill's thoughts on 3.x, but since this part is long enough as it is, we felt there was really no reason to delay getting this out to you, our listeners. It's already going to be a stacked December for Third Impact Anime, and we're already delivering a Christmas present to you all with our Anime Secret Santa episode, as well as our annual year-in review. But maybe we can sneak in another Grand Line Reborn episode in there as well. We'll see. If you're still jonesing for some 14 content, however, you can hear me on the newest episode of the Carbuncle Chronicle, where we talked about the European Fan Fest keynote from London, and our hopes for the Echoes of Vana'diel raid series that will be debuting in the new expansion, Dawn Trail. As always, feel free to reach out to us with any comments or questions on the show via our email, which is agrandlinereborn@gmail.com. Otherwise, enjoy the show.
So, Tobias, why don't you give us a bit of an update of what's going on with your One Piece reading?
Sure. So after taking way too long to get to Skypia, I jumped straight into the next arc, which is mysteriously called Water 7, the Water 7 saga. But there's nothing about, there's water, but there's nothing 7 about it, because it kind of starts us off on a very strange island, the Long Ring Long Land Island, full of trees that are super tall, animals that are super long, a guy that's on super stilts, some weird old man with his weird horse.
If I remember correctly, the main city in the Water 7 arc is based off Venice in Italy, because the way they travel around is all through boats, small mini boats, if I remember.
Yeah. So when we get to actual Water 7, it's pretty much Venice. You're absolutely correct there. But before then, we have this strange set of islands, this sort of ring of islands that are separated by these rising tides. And this is very, very apparently the Long Ring, Long Land arc, very apparently almost a filler. I don't know if it's appropriate to call it filler when it's just manga, but it feels like a filler arc until we get to more stuff with Water 7. Because immediately what happens, we discover this weird old guy and his weird old horse, that there's another pirate crew that shows up. The Foxy Gang, I think they're called?
The Foxy Pirates.
The Foxy Pirates, yeah. Led by Foxy the Silver Pirate, I think his name is. And this pirate gang is all about sort of stealing away other crew members, because they engage in this traditional pirate game called the Davy Back Fight, which is just a bunch of BS made up for this manga. It makes no sense, but it's almost like 3 rounds of American Gladiators kind of stuff, almost. Or if you remember, Takeshi's Castle, our most extreme challenges that got localized over here. Very silly sort of games, with the stakes for each game being the winning pirate gang can take a crew member of the other, the losing pirate crew. And so the Foxy Pirates' whole stick is they'll go around challenging people to the Davy Back Fight. They will cheat all throughout, mainly thanks to Foxy's main power, which we'll talk about in a second, and sort of build up their own pirate group by stealing parts of others. So we start off, before they get to the island, they see another pirate group that's been decimated by this. Their Jolly Roger's been taken. They're just kind of adrift. They've lost all will to continue, and kind of wondering what happened here. What happened to these people that they're all like this?
Yeah, and I think we'll get into this pretty soon, but I it's funny because when I initially watched the Davy Back Fight in the anime, I was probably a bit annoyed because it was really goofy. But now I'm thinking back on it now, it's just like, no, that's the fun. That's the best part of it. It's a goofy, fun time. Like, yeah, it's a little serious because you're like, oh no, a member of our favorite crew member is gonna leave. They're gonna take Chopper away. Oh no! But no, it gets really silly, and that's the fun part.
Yeah, going in, with it being very apparently a filler sort of arc, I was a little annoyed at first because trying to get to Skypiea, which took so long. Skypiea gives us things like we see Doflamingo and we see who were the pirates under Doflamingo? I can't remember.
Pirates.
Bellamy, I think, right? But Bellamy.
Yeah. But Bellamy's like a minion of Doflamingo.
Yeah, so like we see all this stuff happening with Doflamingo and whatever else was happening on Jaya there. Yeah, we get a glimpse of that. We completely stop because we have to go to Skypiea. And when we go back to Skypiea, we're going back into the silly shenanigans once again. So like at first I was a little annoyed, but as it went on, I really did enjoy this arc a lot more than I was expecting to. I think the Foxy crew is a lot of fun. They're all kind of silly and they have their own sort of iconic like appearances and jokes all throughout. Over the 3 rounds of the fight, you get to see each of the Straw Hat pirates get to do their own thing. So we get spotlights on everybody, which is nice as well. And the whole thing ends with a kind of a fun fight. Again, nothing as high stakes as NL or Crocodile, but the sort of the final confrontation with Foxy was a lot of fun. I you know what? I don't think the live action series will actually get this far, but I would love to see a live action Davy Back Fight. Surely they'll do 1 episode, right? Of just the Davy Back Fight.
I think instead of I think in the manga and the anime, it's like 3 challenges to and like whoever wins the most wins the Davy Back Fight. I think the way they would do it is they would do one event and then probably be the boxing one because you gotta do Luffy with the I don't know how they're gonna do Luffy with the afro in the live action show. That would be amazing.
That would be great.
That would be pretty great. But I think that's the one thing they would take from the Davy Back Fights if they do it, or at the very least they would have a Foxy Pirate cameo, kind of like what they did with Don Creed.
Yeah, and we actually did get a Foxy cameo in the very first scene, right? And when they're showing the Gold Roger execution or something like that, they have a wanted poster, and Foxy's one of the wanted posters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you caught that, but there's a few like that where you can see a few pirates later, and I appreciate that they didn't just use like the One Piece, like the manga or the anime characters for the wanted posters. I appreciate that they actually used the live action depictions as photos almost.
Yeah, that was a surprise in the Netflix show, just seeing all the posters and kind of giving you teases of upcoming characters that we might potentially meet in the future.
If they continue. But so in the first part here, they're having a race around the island. It is Nami, Usopp, and Robin. I think the Straw Hats are about to score a clear win when the cheating Foxy uses his power, the slow fruit, which he shoots like a beam, almost like a laser beam sort of deal, where he slows you down for about 30 seconds, almost like glacially slow. So right when they're at the finish line, he uses his powers, and the Foxy Pirates win.
I love his power. His power is very... it makes sense, like, with his power set that he'd want to do the Davy Back Fights because he can slow people down and give him an easy advantage. And just... this is one of the few times I would love to hear your reaction to the anime, because the actor who plays the Foxy in the anime is a lot of fun, doing a pronouncement of his power every time, going "Meta Meta Beam!" in just a very dramatic fashion every time. It's a lot of fun.
Maybe I'll check out a few of the episodes of this part in particular to see. I saw that, kind of looking through, that the anime does 6 total battles instead of 3, right?
Probably we gotta spread it out as much as we can, so that way we don't crunch up to manga probably.
Yeah, and even looking up stuff for the music tracks for the last episode, I noticed that there are a few extra arcs that are thrown in for good measure between Skypia and this. So at the end of the first round, the Straw Hats lose. The Foxy Pirates choose Chopper as their win that time, and unfortunately, Chopper was one of the members of the next fight, which is almost like a, I don't know, like a soccer sort of inspired thing. It's called the Groggy Ring. It's a 3-on-3 fight. One person on each side is the ball, the quote unquote ball, and the objective is for the other team to take their opponent's ball and dunk them into a ring on the other side. So it's something like basketball, but except a person, an actual participant, is the ball that you chunk into the ring. And this is one of those scenarios where, again, the Foxy Pirates are cheating the whole time. They're using weapons where they're not supposed to be allowed to use weapons. Here we see, for sure, the referee that is entirely a Foxy Pirate and thus helping them cheat is turning his back or falling asleep or nodding off every time the Groggy monsters cheat. Whereas every time Zoro or Sanji do anything, he immediately calls them out, throws the flag up. Mm-hmm. But despite all this, I had a lot of sort of fun. I think I was actually reading this part when I was at FanFest, like waiting in line for doing stuff at FanFest. So that's almost where my sense memory is sort of tied to this part in particular, is me quickly skimming through these pages while I'm waiting in line. But as I recall, there seems a few panels that are really sort of, oh man, how do you describe this? I hate to say epic because epic's so overused, but sort of these epic style panels and poses where we see Sanji and Zoro sort of jump around and sort of win this fight. Whereas the first one is a little more silly, and we see, of course, any arc where Usopp is there is going to be a little silly for the most part. Here we see more action-oriented, more stuff. And since this is, like I said, a filler section, any little bit of action is going to be nice for sure. But anyway, at this point, Zoro and Sanji do eke out a win, barely. They elect to take Chopper back as part of their spoils. And the whole time we have Chopper crying on the sidelines. Like, he's sitting in the Foxy Pirates, I want to say, what is it, like Porsche? The one, like, female Foxy Pirate that's there. She's like, she's absolutely in love with Chopper.
I don't know if it's the same way in the manga, but she calls Chopper Choppy and like rubs her face against his chin, and like Chopper is just having none of it. And I think at some point in the Davy Back Fight, Robin is also with Chopper in the box. Like, she gets moved to the Foxy Pirate side, and I love Robin's reaction to this. Is like, oh, this is goofy. I'm having fun.
I seem to recall that too. When they were leading up, the Foxy Pirates have set up like stalls, almost like this is an event that's open to the public, even though it's really kind of not. Like, they have food stalls and merch sales, and Luffy's like really into it. Like, he's buying Foxy Pirates merch. He's excited about the whole thing. Yeah, no, I recall. I think Nami's more worried because of course, people being taken. But Robin's like, this is fun. This is silly. Whatever. Let's enjoy it. Okay, but the last round is a one-on-one boxing match, a fight between the captains, Luffy and Captain Foxy. And this is more of a traditional sort of one-piece fight. You know, like every arc we've seen so far, you've got the crew faces off against sub-bosses. We get to see some fun powers while they outsmart them, whatever. But it always comes down to Luffy fighting some uber powerful figure, and this is it. The stakes here, they have to fight all on the Foxy Pirates ship. They can't leave the ship. If they go out of bounds, much like Smash Brothers, they lose. And the way this sort of starts off is like a boxing match. Luffy comes out with a big old afro. And it turns out that when they were sort of getting their stuff together, gearing up for the fight, Usopp had found a fake afro wig somewhere in the brig they were in or whatnot. So, man, this is the afro is the spirit of a man. You have to put this on. to increase your fighting ability. And Luffy's like, all right, this is cool. Whatever. I don't get it.
I love
but...
that whole speech because Usopp is like is Luffy's corner man, basically.
Yeah.
During the fight, where he's like, "Go get him, kid! You got this. You get the heart of man. You get the heart of a man. You can do it."
Yeah, and I think this fight is the fight is I think where it kind of won me over. This arc did, because even though it is still very silly, I think it's fun in ways that, hell, even like the crocodile and animal fights weren't. Like, those are just regular shonen fights back and forth. But in this fight, like, Foxy will run away, he will hide, he'll actually disguise himself in a very bad disguise as like the ship's cook or whatnot. And it's obviously him, but Luffy's stupid as hell, so he doesn't realize. And he's like, "Oh, thank you, kind sir. I'm looking for Foxy. Have you seen him?" And so he directs him to somewhere else, into a trap or whatnot. And I think one of the most interesting visually aspects to this was the cannonballs. So when they're outside, Foxy has a set of like cannonballs being slung from each side, all around really, and he's using his slow beam to ride on them. So like he'll slow a cannonball down, he'll like stand on it in a very surreal sort of scenario, and he'll slow down Luffy as well, and use the timing of these slow abilities to lead Luffy into traps and get hit by cannonballs. But all in all, I think what happens at the end is that there at one point was some sort of mirror in a room where Foxy was using the mirror to reflect his slow beams back and forth to try to trap Luffy in an almost impossible scenario. Yeah, he had like a giant robot at one point, right? Like he had a tank robot. Like a gun tank or something in a very impossibly small room while using this ability. But in any case, Luffy's able to take a shard of this mirror when it breaks, and he is at the last minute able to redirect a slow beam back onto Foxy, slowing him down, giving a taste of his own medicine, and in one quick Guma pistol is able to defeat Foxy at the end of the day. As we all knew, because this is One Piece, and the heroes are never going to really lose exactly, so especially not in a failure scenario. So yeah, at the end of the day, the Straw Hats come on top. I think at the end, the penalty that the Foxy gang had to take, I think it was a choice between getting a shipwright, because at this point, sort of the big thing they needed was that the Going Merry is sort of falling apart. They need a shipbuilder or a shipwright to help repair their ship, because Usopp is, while he's competent, he's not exactly a shipwright. So they need a professional.
It's basically been up to this point, like Usopp is holding the ship together with like glue, gum, and duct tape, and trying to do his best, but there's only so much that he can do in keeping the ship going.
Exactly. So when they see that the Foxy Pirates have a shipwright, Luffy decides instead to force them to take a Jolly Roger, a crudely drawn Jolly Roger. And if you've seen the live action One Piece, you know the one part where he tries to draw his own Straw Hat Pirate insignia, and the group vetoes it almost immediately. He pretty much forces one of those onto the Foxy Pirates in a very Luffy fashion. Rather than take the thing that they need, he decides to dishonor them, or make them take a silly penalty in that regard. But I'm sure that the Foxy Pirates will come back eventually. They're a fun group, and like you mentioned, Bill, anybody that doesn't die, if we don't see a death, or even if we see a death, that doesn't mean they're gone for good. So I'm sure this group will come back.
I will say they are in a very fun filler movie that we might get to in the future. That's a lot of fun. Like I think Toei Animation realized, like, oh yeah, Foxy's a fun character, we should use him, and so he's shown up in a couple filler things in the future.
after the Davy Back Fight situation completely rectified, they go back to the old man on the Long Ring, Long Land island. I think the issue with him, the reason they brought him up is that this archipelago, this ring of islands, there's a rising tide that takes what is initially one long ring, becomes individual islands every 10 years or something like that. So this guy is stuck on his one island while the rest of his nomadic tribe that he belongs to has already kept going. So he's kind of waiting out the days until he can travel with his horse Shelley to join his group. And as it turns out, right when they finish the Davy Back Fight, sitting at his home is a mysterious figure, a tall man that is just standing there and standing up. They wake him up and he introduces himself as Aokiji, or Admiral Aokiji.
Ooh.
And here we have the sort of overarching plot of One Piece comes to bear among our crew. It is revealed that Aokiji, he's a member of the world government. I want to say he's not one of like the big head admirals, is he?
He is.
Or is that a spoiler? Okay. I remember them mentioning he was very important.
I'm trying to avoid spoilers for you, but where you are in the manga currently, he is one of the 3 admirals that report to the fleet admiral.
So there are 7 warlords on the pirate side, and there are 3 fleet admirals on the world government marines.
On the marine side, they have 3 admirals, usually 3, and then they have a fleet admiral that's basically the one in charge. So you've met your first admiral.
Because we've already seen him in the live action, I've already had this kind of spoiled for me. Is Garp one of the other admirals, or is he the fleet admiral?
He's a vice admiral.
Vice admiral.
He could have been an.
So he's under.
Yeah, he's under the 3 admirals. Like
Okay.
there's a bunch of vice admirals. Then there's the 3 admirals. Then there's a fleet admiral.
Okay, well, we see Aokiji show up almost just randomly, really. But it turns out he's looking for Nico Robin, who suddenly comes to the forefront of this next arc. It turns out that her ability to read poneglyphs is pretty rare, as has already been established. But she's already been around reading poneglyphs for people, for example, Crocodile. And it turns out that every group that she's been with has been destroyed. Whether they've been killed or hunted or fallen apart in some way, Robin leaves a path of destruction in her wake. And Aokiji and Luffy have a fight. It turns out that Aokiji's ability is ice. He can freeze things solid, and he does, in fact, freeze Luffy into a solid block. But at the end, he decides, you know what? If you want to keep Nico Robin, that's fine. She's going to kill you anyway. We'll capture her eventually. And a very strange, shonen manga scenario, just decides to leave after he came all the way out here to get Nico Robin, and decides, you know what, I'm good. I'll come back later. There's still more manga to do.
They do explain a little bit of his relationship with Nico Robin later, which I won't spoil. But there's a reason why he's kind of kept the distance, but he's always being watchful. I don't know what if the manga illustrated what Nico Robin's reaction was to seeing Aokiji the first time around, but I remember it was kind of the same way Vivi reacted to Crocodile, where it's just total fear. Whereas before, Nico Robin is very cool, very calm, very collective character. You never see her break. But around Aokiji, she is very nervous.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You could tell that a lot of her past had come to bear in a way that hadn't in the previous arc. And yeah, I think this mysterious figure, reading manga, you can tell this is a character that's supposed to have an impression on you, that's supposed to mean something. It's not just a foxy pirate, not just a random dude here. Whether or not the manga handles it gracefully, or whether the story handles it gracefully by just having a mysterious guy show up, it's kind of up to you, up to the reader. But it was very apparent that things are starting to go down. A lot of story is coming to a head.
Can I ask you a little sidebar question? This has been the think the second or third time where they introduce like a mysterious character, and you're like Black when they introduced Blackbeard during the when Luffy fights Bellamy, and you're like, why are they giving this character such a big deal? when One Piece does this, or when other media does this, of just like, ooh, here's this really cool mysterious character. How do you as a reader or watcher feel about that? Because some people feel kind of annoyed and just feel like, oh, you're just trying to manipulate me into feeling a certain way. Do you find it just like an annoying plot thing? Because some people don't like that.
Well, I will say that I think it helps when the story makes a point to build them up before showing them. So with Blackbeard, like, we had heard stories of Shanks and Buggy being with Blackbeard's crew like previously. Like, we got some lead up to hear about this guy before, so that when he shows up, a guy with a big old black beard, and they slowly unveil it, it's like, oh, okay, here, the links are being connected. That's kind of cool. I mean, hell, even when not Shanks, but Ace, when Ace shows up, that one part, he introduces himself as being like a lieutenant or something in Whitebeard's crew. And then almost immediately, like a chapter or two later, we see Whitebeard. It's just a quick one-panel shot of Whitebeard. I think that kind of helps. But in this case, you just have this Aokiji figure just show up. And suddenly, I mean, we can use the context clues of Robin being really scared, him being very powerful, able to defeat Luffy in one attack. That kind of lends to it. But I don't know. I think there's maybe a difference between what happened with Blackbeard because of the lead up and what happened with Aokiji. And I think another thing that helps is that Blackbeard isn't shown to be a total badass initially, like right out the gate. Like, he's a goofy dude. You know, we get to warm up to him before. Now, maybe in the arcs that follow, maybe Blackbeard will be a total badass. Maybe he can beat somebody like Aokiji one-handed, you know, no problem. Maybe. But for now, we see him as kind of a silly person. And I think that kind of helps ingratiate him to me, more so than just Aokiji, who just showed up and beat the crew and said, peace, I'm out. I'll be back later. I'll show up in a later arc when Oda knows what to do with me.
You're not like, oh my god, it's total badass. You're like, nah, that's kind of annoying.
I mean, part of it, again, is just, at this point, I'm old enough to know when these long-form stories are doing what they do. Again, like I said in Skypia, there are times where it is apparent that One Piece is a weekly series and is running for a long time and is meant to run for a long time. Again, perhaps that is for the best. Perhaps having a character like this show up and drop out is for the better. I mean, hell, One Piece has been running for a long time now. I'm sure Oda's made a lot more money than I have and is a better storyteller than I am. So, you know, no shade to him. Who am I to really shade Oda's writing? But to me, it almost grates when I see like the weekly stories show up and become apparent that they're doing things like doing fillers or introducing characters to draw out a few weeks to lead you next thing. It kind of grates against me a little bit. Not enough to get me to drop the series or hate it, but it still is like, I see what you're doing here.
I can see the grate, but the one thing I will give it is you gotta have, as a reader, even though you know Luffy's going to win, you need to have you need to create some sort of disbelief that Luffy and crew are not invincible, right? So when they have like a badass character like Aokiji show up and he just handles Luffy like that, it makes you as the reader reset your expectations and go, oh, Luffy isn't going to win all the time. What's gonna and like you said, it's a weekly series, so you don't know like, wow, what's gonna happen next. So even though we know Luffy's probably gonna win in the end, it kind of breaks up the idea of just like, okay, yeah, Luffy's gonna win Davy Back Fight. Let's get going. By introducing this really tough character, it allows you to say like, oh wait, no, there are tougher characters out in the world where Luffy can't win.
And if nothing else, it does in fact give us the impetus for the next part. The way he kind of ends it is he uses his super ice powers to create an ice bridge for the old man so he can journey on and meet up with his nomad. Do we ever see the old man and the horse Shelly show up later? Or is he gone?
To be honest, I don't remember.
So probably not. I kind of figured that would be the case, honestly. But at this point, the crew decides to travel on to Water 7. I want to say Water 7 has renown as the shipbuilding island. And since lo and behold, this is what the crew needs, Water 7 is the obvious destination. And just for my benefit, they're all still on the Grand Line, right?
Yes.
I just remember being kind of shocked when we did way back in the first saga that it was led up to be we have to travel to the Grand Line because that's where the One Piece is, and they get to the Grand Line almost immediately. Like it makes sense that it's the entire stretch, the equator or whatever, the equator of the world.
I think the Grand Line is basically like a certain section of the entire world, like the equator, that just goes down a long pathway.
It makes sense, in context of the series, but like the past, 20 whatever years that I've been hearing of One Piece and been hearing the song, the One Piece rap, I always kind of pictured the Grand Line as being like, that was the destination, that was the target. And they immediately get there, and they're still in the Grand Line. Do they ever leave the Grand Line? Just yes or no? No?
I don't know. Just I'm trying to avoid going into a long tangent, but
okay.
But I'll say that maybe that will be bonus content for the pod down the road.
All right. Well, so they're still on the Grand Line. They decide to travel to Water 7 with the shipbuilding community. And so we'll cover a little bit of that because I'm a little bit into Water 7 where things are starting to really spike up. Mm-hmm. But they actually, before they get to the city of Water 7, there's a little train station island they get to with this old woman and her young granddaughter, I want to say, daughter or granddaughter.
Yep. You got that about right.
Okay. I can't remember their names, but they had kind of funny names if I remember. But we get there, we find out there is in fact a water train that sort of runs back and forth between here and Water 7 and a few of the other islands in the vicinity. It makes me think of Spirited Away with the one train that runs across the water surface and that.
I could see that.
There was a frog, wasn't there? It was a big old frog that its entire existence is trying to tackle the train and trying to knock the train off the path. And it looks all scarred and messed up, and I think it rams once again into the train as we see it and bounces off completely in a very comical situation. Anyway, the crew gets to Water 7 proper. They are quickly introduced. I think it's a place that pirates aren't really supposed to be there, but they pretty much let them in the back entrance because pirates bring a lot of money, and right. Pirates need pirate ships, so they let them show up to spend their money on the island. Like you said earlier, it's pretty much One Piece's version of Venice, where roads are replaced by these canals, and people ride in boats, but the boats are powered by these like manatee creatures, right? They're almost like crosses between manatees and like Yoshis. They look like a Yoshi a little bit. Or Mario. Anyway, so they get to the shipbuilding district. They meet the Mayor Iceberg, who is very eager to take their money. I should note at this point that they have all the spoils from Skypia. They have like 3 million?
As a thank you for dealing with God and saving the bell. They were given money as a thank you, and they are able to use that money to basically get the ship examined by Iceberg's crew and see if it can be repaired.
Right. So they show up with a ton of money. It almost gets stolen once by this gang called the Franky gang. They go to repair the ship. There's one guy there with a big old nose, not completely unlike Usopp's nose, but more square, more rectangular nose. He quickly runs from one end of the island to the other. He's kind of doing this like crazy parkour to sort of jump from building to building to sort of investigate the ship. It turns out at the end of the day, though, that the Going Merry is just too damaged to repair. The hull, sort of the main part on the underside of the ship, is falling apart, and it's just completely beyond repair, really. It would pretty much be like building a new ship. Pretty much like a Ship of Theseus situation, if they wanted to continue with the Going Merry. And this is where things come to a head with the Straw Hats, because Luffy at first is very adamant that they repair the Going Merry, that the Going Merry is their ship. It is part of the crew. We have to continue with her. And the crew is kind of with her, with him at the end, alongside that. But then after getting this explanation, Luffy comes to terms with the fact that no, we're going to have to buy a new ship. We cannot continue with the Going Merry. And Usopp completely disagrees here. Like, digs his heels in the sand here, will not accept the fact that they have to get another ship. I think at this point, Usopp's really believed in Luffy and Luffy's ability to captain the crew. And to see him turn his back on their crew member of the ship is completely against everything Usopp believes in. And so Usopp decides to challenge Luffy to a duel. I think the stakes are basically what, like, if Usopp wins, he becomes the captain.
I think the idea is if I win, we keep the Going Merry, and we find a way to repair it. And if you win, if you win, I will leave the crew, and you can do whatever you want with the Going Merry.
Right. So,
before you get into the fight, I want to talk about just Usopp's reaction to Luffy's decision of letting go of basically leaving behind the Going Merry, because this is the first time really that we've seen internal strife within the crew, correct?
I mean, yeah, but aside from Nami and the Arlong Park arc, this is the first time we've seen them sort of split.
Yeah, and you can kind of understand from Usopp's perspective why he wants to keep the Going Merry, even though it's a lost cause, because it was basically their very first ship, and probably as the makeshift shipwright, he has a lot of pride in maintaining the ship and feeling like he has contributed to the crew as the makeshift shipwright, even though that's not his main skill set. And to leave behind the Going Merry after all they've done is basically like abandoning one of them and not giving them a chance. And it's interesting because everyone thinks of Luffy as this kind of goofy character that doesn't take things seriously, but in this instance, he's thinking very responsibly of what is good for my crew in the long term. While I love the Going Merry can no longer support us in the long term. So I have to do what's best for us as a crew to keep going forward.
Yeah, completely. And another thing I didn't even remember until you just said that was that the ship itself came from Kaya, his childhood friend back on Surf Village. So I think that's probably another reason why Usopp is so adamant to keep the Going Merry, because this is kind of, this was given to him by Kaya, a person who he has deep love for, and that's another direct connection that he has with the ship. But I think you hit the nail on the head, honestly. Another thing I would say is that I think we would agree that maybe Usopp is the least useful member of the crew, maybe. Even he, as a character, often feels like he is contributing the least. Like, we have Zoro and Sanji are the fighters. We have Chopper as sort of the medical mind here. Nami can read maps and is navigating the crew to begin with. Robin is just sort of an all-purpose badass. And Luffy wins the fights. And Usopp, while Usopp contributes, I think that even he feels like he is the weakest link of the crew. And I kind of wonder if maybe if he were to allow the Going Merry to be cast aside, what's stopping them from casting him aside when the situation arises? You know what I mean?
Right, because he also, as a character, has a lot of internal doubts about his own self-worth, right? So by losing the Going Merry, that's losing one aspect that he contributes. So if he loses his one thing that he knows he fully contributes to, then his thinking is, well, what do I do now? On top of this is a member of our family. We can't abandon someone that a ship that we've grown to love and lived in for probably months at a time.
Yeah. And I think this is great because we see some deeper development here than is sort of typical, even in typical in One Piece so far. We've seen tough situations. Like we mentioned earlier along Park, we saw Nami's entire situation and her relationship with her mother and her sister and the village mates, and the village members all sort of came together in a way that was very satisfying and is sort of a great introduction to One Piece. The Arlong Park was. Here we have that sort of come up again. We have side characters that have internal struggles. We saw Vivi. We saw some of the people on Skype sort of deal with these bigger issues. But here we have it brought to the crew directly, where Usopp is struggling with something personal. There is, the whole aspect of losing a crew member and getting rid of a crew member, the going Merry here, is something he struggles with personally, and Luffy struggles with it, if we're being honest. But he's coming to the tough decision, what he feels is a necessary decision as a captain, to make this tough call that he doesn't really want to.
And it's not like Luffy is flippant about leaving the going Merry behind. I think he's also like, I'm also extremely sad about this, and I love the going Merry, but I have to do what's right for our future.
So after this argument they have, they decide they can't be resolved by talking. They decide to have a one-on-one duel that takes place the next day. We see here that, of course, Luffy goes in guns blazing, or rather I should say, rubber pistols blazing. While Usopp has sort of watched Luffy this whole time and see his fighting style, and since he's all about having different sort of explosive shells and whatnot in his slingshot, as he is the sharpshooter, he sort of devised a plan to get around Luffy and sort of trick him into using way too much energy and missing him. I think there's like smokescreen involved at one point. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of sort of trickery involved. Usopp is able to get a pretty good hits and actually get a lot further than one would expect in a fight against the guy that beat up this golden god, and Crocodile, this huge sand monster. He actually gets pretty far comparatively, but at the end of the day, he does lose against Luffy.
I do want to say I love the fight, because when I initially watched it, you're like, well, Usopp's going to get destroyed because of Luffy. Luffy's more the fighter, and he's more with his brute strength. He could probably destroy Usopp like that. But the fight does a really good job of illustrating, like, no, Usopp's been with the crew long enough that he knows Luffy's strategies and tricks. So he plays a very strategic game, using the conch shells as one as like a smoke screen, one as an explosive power, and like you said, is able to get some hits in because of using his head to fight Luffy and going in with a strategy. But that ending of that fight is brutal, because like I remember like Usopp looks like he's just destroyed, he's beat up, and he's, even though he knows he's lost, he's still trying to stand up, still trying to keep going, to fight, to save the going Merry. And at the end, if I remember correctly, Luffy says, I'm just going to give you the going Merry, but I'm going to look for a new ship. And the other crew members are really heartbroken by this. I think I see Nami at some point tear up and just take the seriousness of this fight of one of our crew members is gone.
It's a very emotional, big sort of moment, and I think this is, so far in Water 7 we see Aokiji show up, and that's sort of the first oh shit moment in this. But then we see this happen, and it's like the second oh shit moment. Like, oh no, things are really going down. The plot is finally advancing in One Piece. After dealing with Skype and this kind of was a big long tangent over to the side, things are starting to really happen with the Straw Hats here, which is what makes it so interesting.
The build up to Aokiji going to Robin in Water 7 is, at least in the anime, you see all these like guys in dark shades and like sort of like MI6 CIA gear. kind of in the background, and you're like wondering what those dudes are doing, and then eventually Aokiji goes to Robin and says basically they make a deal where Robin goes with Aokiji and his like CIA type goons, and the crew.
I'm going to stop you there because I think maybe you're getting a little bit ahead of where I'm at.
Oh no!
I think a little bit. So I'm going to stop you there before you really get into spoiling something major. Because, let's see, so we see the Usopp, Luffy fight. Yeah, you're right. He gives him the Going Merry. And at this point, like, the ship is, I don't know if it's like in the anime, but the ship is, like, docked in some sort of landlocked section. It's almost like
it's like a dry
tide's
dock,
been
right?
brought low or something. Well, like, maybe I need to go back and check, but it looks like it's actually docked in, like, a little lake, like, on land. Like, they're surrounded by land. And I don't know if maybe it's because of this weather event that's about to happen. I can't... The Aqua Laguna, the high tide, I don't know if it's related to that, or maybe it's just the way they drew it in the manga, but, like, it looks like the Going Merry is stuck there.
I don't remember that. I remember, like, the Going Merry is, like, sort of in, like, a dock, an interior dock type scenario, but maybe that's later on down the story.
That could be it. Yeah, we said that their water, their 3 million berries or whatever they had, like that was stolen at one point, gotten back, but no, it was actually stolen again for real by the Franky gang. Unfortunately, it was sort of taken from Usopp, which is one of the reasons that he was feeling so down and useless this whole time, because he lost their entire cash reserve. Meanwhile, we see the Franky gang, this group of dismantlers, this group that sort of dismantles ships and sells the parts to the shipbuilders of Water 7. This crew got the money. The mysteriously robed Franky goes out and immediately spends all the money. Supposedly, the Straw Hats go to his hideout and completely destroy his crew, like knock down the building. We're still unable to find the money because Franky's taken it. So Franky's searching for them because he wants revenge for destroying his home base. They want their money back. They eventually do meet up, I want to say, in the square, where the rest of the city is worried about this high tide coming in. It's almost hurricane-style event, the Aqua Laguna showing up. The Franky gang and the Straw Hats, and also the Gali La shipbuilders all meet up to have a big fight, because overnight, while Usopp and Luffy were getting ready to fight, the mayor, Iceberg, was shot and almost killed. And the blame is immediately placed on the Straw Hat Pirates, who showed up here. I can't remember if somebody said they saw Luffy or if they just suspect him, but for whatever reason, the city thinks that Luffy tried to kill the mayor.
I remember the reason, but I don't want to say because I'm afraid it's a spoiler thing.
Well, for some reason, one reason or another, the Straw Hats are blamed for the attempted assassination of Mayor Iceberg. I should also mention that Robin is gone. At some point very early on in the Water 7, she leaves mysteriously, and Sanji sees her leave with what he assumes is like an official, but so he doesn't think to like chase her down. But like she leaves, we see a few shots of her talking to silhouetted figures. You know, something is going on with Robin, linked to the Aokiji stuff from earlier and the previous arc. But it all comes down to a big three-way fight between the Straw Hats and the Gali La, and the Franky pirates. And I should mention that the Galileo shipbuilders are shown to be significant fighters on their own right. We see them fend off some of Franky's gang earlier, and they're able to use the different ship tools they have, and the one guy, the parkour guy with the big nose, is like super fast. And they're strong fighters in the very One Piece style. They all kind of have near magical powers, if not direct magical powers or devil fruit powers. But they're all badasses.
I don't know if like Iceberg Secretary is involved in the fight too. Like there's a couple characters.
I don't think yet.
There's a couple characters that from the Law Gang that's like, oh, they're not just your normal run-of-the-mill henchmen. They can actually really fight.
Yeah. Everything comes down to a fight. Franky uncloaks and reveals himself to be a very One Piece style character, a very silly figure. He's like a buff guy that's obviously skipped leg day. He's very like chicken legs, but he's like a really buff upper body. He's got a very pompadour. He's got a pompadour pretty much. It's not quite as like fluffy as you can imagine some pompadours, but it's almost like a big swoop. I mentioned that because when he runs out of energy, it actually sinks down, covering his face. But he's got big old arms, like ridiculous Popeye arms, and he's got a metal nose, and apparently he's an android. I'd seen Franky before in some like One Piece pictures, but I didn't know he was like actually a robot, actually an android for real. We see one of the things he does. He has like rocket punches and like rope or chains attached to his rocket punches, so like he can do sort of that iconic attack. I think he has like some sort of wind ability, right? Is that the coup event?
Which
is he just has like, it's almost like a big Mega Man style. Like he gets one of his arms turned into like a Mega Buster, and he just blows a whirlwind. Out. So yeah, this guy shows up. We initially see Franky as a road figure, and he looks very mysterious and really evil. But we see him for real. It's kind of silly. And like he's got these cheerleaders that hang out with him. I think maybe his sisters that like will do the same moves he does, kind of, and they'll pose alongside him.
They do the Franky dance.
The Franky dance, yeah. It's just it's very much a One Piece style character for sure. So yeah, they have a big fight. I think it could have ends in a stalemate when he uses the coup event to blow wind everywhere. It kind of causes enough of a diversion where everybody sort of breaks off. Franky's out of juice, so he goes to the bar and chugs like a bunch of sodas. He drinks
cola.
He takes like cola. Yeah, he takes like three 2 liters of cola, puts them in his chest cavity because again he's a robot, and he drinks up the cola and he regains his energy.
That's his big energy source is cola. That's a recurring thing.
and I recall at this point when he's at the bar, he ends up meeting the old woman from the train station island from earlier. She showed up because she knows that the Aqua Laguna is coming, and she knows that her usual island is dangerous. But she comes to Water 7 to sort of hunker down with her daughter, her granddaughter, or whatever it was. And they meet Franky. They talk. They know each other. Here we see Franky's not like a complete villain. He's almost like a local hero.
They get in. I don't know where you are in the story, but did they get into his backstory yet?
Not yet, no. That's pretty much the last thing we see from where I'm at currently. I think the last actual thing that happens is once Luffy and gang realize that they're being framed for this attempted murder, Luffy decides to go talk with Mayor Iceberg to clear their name. Basically, okay, I wasn't the one you saw. Obviously, I didn't do it. He breaks in. There's a big sort of situation when he's being chased through the main, the mayoral manor or whatnot. He gets to Iceberg, who is awake, because again, he's not dead. He's in a coma, I think, very briefly, but has woken up and tells them that he did see Nico Robin try to kill him. So even though Luffy is not the murderer, the attempted murderer, Robin is, and Luffy does not believe that.
Right, and because Nico Robin was part of Luffy's crew, Luffy is getting the blame for it.
Exactly. And so that's where I'm at that was where I sort of finished. I think at this point we're going to see the situation with Robin and these mysterious figures. I think they did mention CP9, so I'm assuming that that's kind of what is up. Whatever this, I assume it's kind of like an MI6 style James Bond organization, very spy situation. That's what I'm guessing, but we'll have to see as it comes up. I'm pretty sure Franky will come back here. We'll see him to be actually a hero. I've read enough. I've seen enough One Piece stuff on the internet, in the ether, out in the world, that I know that Franky's going to stick around. I'm pretty sure he joins the crew after this, so he can't be a bad guy completely. But how we get there will be interesting.
It's always the journey with One Piece. You wonder where things are going to go.
But even though I know that Franky is who he is for the most part, what I don't know is how they're going to get out of the situation with Robin. Like, it seems that things are starting to really come to a head with the world government. And, that's always been, to me, one of the more interesting aspects of One Piece is, what are the Marines doing on the side? What are the goals of this world government that is so adamant to destroy the pirate civilization, the pirate culture that's created? What was Gold Roger doing that caused him to be such a big figure? What is the One Piece? I feel like all these sort of leading to this one indelible point. What was the point, the one singular piece, if you will, of One Piece?
I will say it's, again, another great example of world building, at least for me, is that the world government has been kind of on the periphery, right? And now, as we've gone on, they're starting to get much larger into the frame of what's going on. And so you're going to get I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but at least in this upcoming arc, is the world government does play a larger role.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know that Water 7 is spoken highly of. I know a lot of people, when I mentioned this, a lot of people, yourself included, perked up when I said I was at Water 7. I feel like this is a good arc.
Yeah, I would say this is a lot of, this whole saga, the Water 7 saga, is a lot of people's favorites. It's probably either this or Alabasta. I would say most people say Alabasta for nostalgia reasons, but Water 7 is, you get some really good, iconic One Piece moments that I am excited to hear your thoughts on as you go through them.
Awesome. Yeah, so, my earlier complaints with Skypia were that we're taking this sort of divergent path away from the main plot of One Piece, that we were pretty much repeating, the Alabasta plot beats again in a different situation that was so detached from the world that we knew it. It's good to get back to sort of the main plot, the main ideas of One Piece. And it's good to see the Straw Hats and their circumstances sort of meet that in the middle with what's happening with Robin. And hell, even with Usopp now, what's going to happen to Usopp? What's going to happen at the Going Merry? Hell, they have had the ship since pretty much the beginning. It is one of the crew. What are they going to do? Are they going to buy a new ship altogether? Is it going to be the Going Merry 2?
There's one part of this whole saga I probably will just send you a clip, and you have to. I would like to see how you think it does in the anime. I won't spoil what it is, but I'd be curious to get your take on it. But I will say this: the Water 7 saga arc for me was very emotional. There are one or two parts I did cry at. So I wonder how you will feel, and if your emotions get riled up like mine did. So we'll see how things go.
I'm looking forward to it. As a fan of Final Fantasy XIV, Lord knows I love to cry about fictional characters. Okay, so any closing thoughts on what I've talked about so far? Any closing thoughts on the Davy Back Fight or the introduction to Water 7?
I'm glad you enjoyed the goofiness of the Davy Back Fight. I know One Piece has a formula and they very much stick to it, but they change up the mood and the tone, I think, just enough with each arc, so that way it doesn't feel too repetitive, because the Davy Back Fight is completely different from what you've read so far in Water 7. And so by kind of switching things up, you don't get, I would say, too bored with what's going on. And I'm just overall excited. Like that Usopp fight between him and Luffy is, I think, a very memorable moment for me, and the importance of that fight, and showing a change of this crew isn't always going to be in perfect sync. That there can be internal conflicts at times. And I'm just excited to see your reactions to the villains to this upcoming arc and certain iconic moments.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm excited to get to it. I know this is a good arc, as professed by a number of people. So if this is sort of the Shadowbringers of One Piece, as it were, I will be looking forward to it.
Well, I hope this is not a situation of overhype where myself or just comments you see online, and then you get through it and you're like, you guys overhyped this too hard. So
I don't think I'm that far, to be honest. I'm not that in tune with the One Piece fandom, so I think I'm good. Although, you know what? I was talking to somebody else about this week. If the whole internet has, again, I don't want to spoil it, but the whole internet has completely lost it over Gear 5th, this new Luffy attack.
Gear 5.
Power.
Yeah,
Gear 5, Gear 5th, whatever. Like, I get it. I've watched some of it. Like, I watched enough to know what it's about, and everyone talks about it being a big cartoony thing, and I ascend up to like classic Western cartoons, and I don't really see that. I think it's just really good Sakuga. Maybe I need more context. I was hesitant to really watch the whole thing because I don't want to be spoiled again. But I saw like a little clip of it, and I'm like, it's okay. But yeah, sometimes the fandom can be a little overly excited. I get what you're saying, but luckily, Water 7. Let's just check the wiki here. This came out in 2005 and 2006, so I think I'm divorced enough from the initial reaction where I don't think I will have too much of a problem with overhype here.
Guess what? It's okay because I got spoiled on Gear 5 too. Because I am an anime viewer primarily, so of course I got spoiled. I think the funniest spoiler for me was I was not expecting this. On my wrestling program that I watched, a wrestler was wearing a Gear 5 Luffy sweatshirt on live TV. And I said to myself, how is he allowed to wear that and not be told you can't wear that? And also spoilers.
We've been having a moment. The live action show is good. So, and to see people sort of really enjoy it broadly, I think, wasn't there a clip I think you shared on the Discord about it? Whoopi Goldberg was like talking about the One Piece live action series, and it seems to be having a moment that, Cowboy Bebop didn't get, that I have to appreciate.
It's pretty astounding to see the Netflix One Piece show succeed so well, where it's getting mainstream notice, and as of this recording, they said season 2 is greenlit. We're working on it. So I think, surprisingly, One Piece could probably be Netflix's like future anchor show. And when I say anchor, it's a show that people are anticipated to watch, and they resubscribe or keep the subscription going because they want to watch this show. Kind of like how for a while it was initially House of Cards, and then it was Stranger Things, and now it looks like One Piece is their new anchor, which is weird to say.
I don't know if I would quite compare it to Stranger Things yet. While that would be cool, don't get me wrong, that would be cool. I don't see One Piece being a Stranger Things level of popularity.
I know this is probably me being overhyped, but the reason I say this is because of just like it's getting noticed by non-anime outlets like that Whoopi Goldberg clip I sent in the Discord, and that at least from the made-up metrics that Netflix releases, it's been a consistent hit even after the initial week when all the hype was there. Like, it's still new people are still watching it. It's still in the top 10 of the Netflix list. So it's seemingly has some staying power, and that's why I'm probably going a bit overboard here. But at least for now, it's looking like an anchor. But again, it's Netflix. We'll have to see if it can last for more than just 2 seasons.
Yeah, and they did announce season 2 is being produced, so I think I really want to wait until... Let's see what happens with season 2 before we really put our eggs in the basket, before we put our... I don't know. I was trying to give a funny One Piece style euphemism there, but...
Before we say we found the One Piece?
Yeah, because they've announced that their CG chopper is going to be a thing.
Well, we don't know what they're doing. They've I think I saw an interview with the executive producer where they would like to do what they did kind of like with Arlong and the Fishman from season 1. But again, we'll have to see. So far they've been very strategic in how they use CGI. They might go overboard and screw it up, but so far they've had a good track record of their implementation of CGI, so we'll have to see how they do.
Alright, well, let's go ahead and wrap up here. So, again, you can always check us out here on thirdimpactanime.com. I believe we have a section set up just for A Grand Line Reborn. We are also on social media. I think I may have announced it in the last episode, but I'm back. I'm back on Blue Sky. You can find me there at Tobias at, whatever, bsky.social, whatever it is, but to search for Tobias or my name, and you should be able to find me pretty easily. And Bill, I think you're on there now as well at your usual name, WB Foreman 999.
3 9s. No one's ever tried to take that name, so I'm sticking with it.
Well, I don't think we've set up one for A Grand Line Reborn directly, and I don't think we will. I think it's pretty fine just being just us and the main Third Impact Anime account, so we'll just stick with that for now and see what happens. But if maybe you're not on Blue Sky yet, maybe if you're not into that, or you're kind of done with Twitter like I was for so long, we are on Discord as well. You can go to thirdimpactanime.com to find our Discord link. We have a channel in that server for this in particular, as the Grand Line Reborn channel, so you can join that. If you want to maybe get sneak peeks and episode previews a little early, we have a specific Patreon channel on the Discord as well. You can find us at Patreon again, just search for Third Impact Anime, and you should be able to throw us a couple bucks per month to get access to that as well, and also access the good feeling that you get from supporting independent creators who, again, don't really get paid for this, generally speaking. You're putting in a lot of hours of work every month to get this podcast to your ear holes. So if you want maybe a little extra good karma in your life, maybe you sort of feel so bad about Usopp leaving the crew and you really want to make yourself feel better, give us a couple bucks. That'll cheer you right up.
Yeah. Instead of paying for another super expensive Starbucks coffee, you can just give us money our way, and whereas that coffee can last you maybe 5 to 10 minutes, we're giving you like hours of content in your ears.
Oh, and also we still do have our email account set up just for the podcast. You can search for, or rather, you can email A Grand Line Reborn at gmail.com. That's all one word, so A Grand Line Reborn at gmail.com. We will, take the opportunity to read any email we get. Well, we'll read most emails we get. If you send us a spam email about the blockchain or whatnot, well, we're not going to read that, naturally. But if you have a review of the show, if you have any sort of helpful comments or even criticisms, feel free to send us that, and we will respond to that on air.
Yeah, I'd love to get people's thoughts on the Usopp fight. If anyone wants to email us about that, maybe they can email and tell me how to properly say names. That'd be good. I need help. Please help me.
Bill, that won't help you. You'll still what do you call it? Aokiji? You'll still say Aokiji. It's fine. Well, as usual, till sea swallows all, set sail for One Piece.
Yo-ho!